August 25th, 2025. Hope your week's starting off okay. Lots of coffee probably needed, right?
Definitely. Futures aren't the only thing in the red this morning.
Exactly. Well, hopefully some sharp intelligence will help cut through the Monday fog. Today we're diving into the Global Intelligence Brief for yesterday, Sunday, August 24th.
Right. And looking at that brief, the overall picture is, well, complex. We're seeing a moderate global threat level, but definitely rising instability across several key regions.
Moderate overall, but pockets of serious concern.
Precisely. Think Gaza and the deepening famine, Russia's ongoing offensive in Ukraine, significant civil unrest in parts of Africa, and even political violence flaring up in Latin America. So multiple hotspots.
But no single trigger point for sort of immediate global escalation.
Not immediately, no. That's the assessment for now. In terms of the info itself, we're looking mostly at Admiralty A2 reliability.
So reliable sources like major news agencies, official statements.
Exactly. Reuters, AP, Africa News, the ISW, we generally treat those as credible, labeled A2. But, cross-validation is still needed, especially for witness accounts or statements coming directly from political actors.
And confidently.
Confidence 4. The data is generally well-sourced, but there are gaps. Some areas, like parts of Latin America or Oceania, lack those official government releases, so we rely more heavily on media reports there. Regional outlets, like, say, My Motherlode, we treat a bit more cautiously. B3, maybe, due to potential bias.
Okay, that makes sense. Setting the baseline. So what's the bottom line up front? The BLUF from yesterday.
The BLUF is pretty clear. Geopolitical tensions definitely ratcheted up, and those economic and humanitarian crises we track deepened on August 24th. Key areas were Russia-Ukraine, obviously, but also shifts in Eurozone foreign labor dependence, that critical Gaza famine, ongoing cooperation and disputes in Asia, crackdowns in Africa, and a mix of disasters and political scandals in Latin America.
Quite a list. And the immediate implications for, say, businesses or markets watching this.
Moderate but growing implications. We're seeing impacts on supply chains, definitely energy markets, and overall investment risk. Things are interconnected,
Absolutely. Okay, let's unpack some of these. Where should we start? Maybe North America? There were a couple of domestic items that caught my eye.
Yeah, a couple contrasting ones, actually. First, the deployment of 2,000 National Guard soldiers in Washington, D.C.
Right, ordered by President Trump for a crime crackdown, but it sparked quite a bit of criticism.
It did. Critics called it a political stunt, especially since violent crime in D.C. is actually down 17% year-to-date, according to reports. The troops are deployed to nonviolent, fairly affluent areas like Georgetown, setting up checkpoints, and Mayor Bowser stated publicly the city hadn't requested federal assistance.
So the why seems political, signaling toughness for the 2026 midterms, perhaps.
That's the prevailing analysis, yeah, rallying the base. The threat level assigned here is low, A3, really seen as domestic political theater. And the peoples here say, social media was pretty divided, lots of ridicule, memes of soldiers near coffee shops, but also praise from some conservative commentators.
Okay, political theater on one hand, but then there's this other move involving tech.
Yes, President Trump appointed Joe Gebbia, the Airbnb co-founder, to lead a new national design studio. The goal is to overhaul federal websites.
That sounds potentially very useful, making government sites less frustrating.
Exactly. Improve user experience, accessibility, unify design standards across thousands of sites. Gebbia is tasked with hiring about 200 designers, piloting new tools. Trump framed it as saving millions of hours for citizens.
And the reaction to that?
Much more positive. Low threat level A2, just administrative reform.
Yeah.
The tech community largely celebrated it online, calling it a potential UX revolution for government services. So a very different reception compared to the National Guard deployment.
Interesting contrast. Politics versus practical tech improvement. Before we continue, just a quick note. This deep dive is powered by NextSite, a global investigations and intelligence leader. Their open-source OSINT platform, Site Connect, is actually what fuels these reports and lets you tailor them to your specific needs.
Yeah, their work is really impressive. From complex cross-border investigations to high-stakes corporate intelligence, they operate on another level, fast, precise, fully corroborated. You can learn more at www.next-site.com.
Okay, we're back. And staying sort of in that tech and industry space in North America, there was some skepticism about another big Trump initiative.
Yes, the $9 billion investment in Intel. This is a big one, funded through the Cheech APS Act.
The goal being boosting domestic chip production, right? Reducing reliance on Asia.
That's the stated goal. Intel's planning major foundry expansions in Arizona, Ohio, New Mexico. The government gets a 9.9% stake for its investment.
Sounds good on paper, but analysts are dubious.
Well, a Reuters analysis really questioned if this cash injection will be enough to rescue Intel's foundry business. The core problem, analysts say, is that Intel still lacks major external customers for its foundry services.
Meaning they might build all this capacity, but struggle to sell it.
Exactly. Public funds can build factories, but they don't automatically create market demand. So there's a real risk of overcapacity and continued reliance on subsidies. The threat level here is moderate, B3, because of the high financial risk and the strategic supply chain implications.
And how does this connect to other policies?
It ties into that Gebbia appointment and the broader push for American AI industrial policy. But analysts are warning, that relying solely on public funds without proven market demand could backfire. The People's Hearsay, again, reflects this skepticism. Lots of comments like, billions for Intel, but who's going to buy their chips?
A critical question indeed. Okay, let's move across the Atlantic. Europe's facing its own economic and geopolitical pressures. What stood out there?
A really key statement came from ECB President Christine Lagarde about foreign workers. She stated quite plainly that they've contributed half of the Eurozone's labor force growth since 2019.
Half. That's huge. So basically propping up the workforce.
Pretty much. It's offsetting demographic trends like shorter working hours and lower real wages among native populations. You see it particularly in Germany and Spain, where immigration has filled critical labor shortages in sectors like healthcare and logistics.
But that must be politically sensitive, right? Especially now.
Extremely. While Lagarde's data highlights an economic necessity and European stocks have been relatively stable, there's that strong anti-immigration backlash simmering, even boiling over in some places. The risk, flagged as moderate A2, is potential social unrest if policies tighten significantly. Lagarde warned that could shave nearly a point off GDP growth.
A real balancing act, economics versus politics. What else is happening in Europe? Any domestic policy shifts?
In the UK, the Justice Ministry proposed new restrictions on convicted criminals, banning them from pubs and sporting events.
Interesting. Why? Is that about rehabilitation or something else?
The stated aim is to reduce prison overcrowding. UK prisons are apparently at 99% capacity and improve rehabilitation through community-based sentences using electronic tags and curfews. Financially, they hope to save on incarceration costs, though the tagging itself has an estimated annual cost of $70 million.
Low threat, A2, domestic policy. Any strong reactions?
Some pub owners voiced concerns about revenue, unsurprisingly, but mostly seen as an internal policy adjustment.
Okay. And then, of course, the ongoing conflict, Russia and Ukraine.
Still very active. Russia's defense ministry claimed control of 2 settlements in Donetsk, Rozdalivka, and another village. Ukraine, however, denied this and claimed to recapture elsewhere. So the usual conflicting claims on the front line.
And the bigger picture strategy. Any shifts?
Not really, according to the Institute for the Study of War. ISW reported that Russia is still rejecting Western security guarantees for Ukraine and sticking to its demands for demilitarization and recognition of annexed territories. Foreign Minister Lavrov is talking to mediators, but apparently not budging on core demands.
So, status quo on the strategic aims. Despite the battlefield churn, threat level remains high. C3.
Yes, high risk of ongoing war and potential escalation. And online, you see a lot of frustration from Ukrainians about perceived Western hesitation. It continues to be a major point of global tension.
Right. Now, shifting south to the Middle East, and this is where the reports get extremely concerning, particularly Gaza.
Yes, profoundly so. This really brings home how humanitarian crises can ignite broader geopolitical risks. The IPC, the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, formally declared famine across all of Gaza yesterday.
A formal famine declaration. That's incredibly serious.
It is. And it came alongside reports of heavy Israeli bombardment near Gaza City and Rafah, killing at least 33 Palestinians, including whole families according to sources. The IPC report stated 100% of Gaza's population faces crisis or worse, food insecurity. UN humanitarian chief Martin Griffiths directly blamed Israeli policies restricting aid, food, and fuel for creating famine.
And Israel's response or actions?
Well, the Israeli cabinet approved a plan to occupy northern Gaza City. This was immediately condemned by Turkey's envoy as a violation of international law. And the UN rights chief, Volker Turk, reiterated that the famine conditions are a result of Israeli obstruction of aid.
This is just catastrophic.
Yeah.
Threat level C4, severe.
Absolutely. Severe humanitarian catastrophe with a very real risk of regional spillover and further conflict. We're already seeing market reactions. Brent crude rose above $88 a barrel. Energy traders are pricing in higher risk premiums, especially if ground operations expand further into Gaza City.
The human element is devastating. What's the people's hearsay showing?
Heartbreaking images from Gaza residents' destroyed homes, empty market shelves, accusations of deliberate starvation. On the Israeli side, commentators argue the operations are necessary to target Hamas. It's incredibly polarized and tragic.
And elsewhere in the region, tensions between Iran and Israel.
Yes, related tensions continue. Iranian state media reported that security forces killed 6 militants in the southeast Sistan-Baluchistan province. They claimed the group was linked to Israel and trained by Mossad, alleging they planned assassinations.
High potential for escalation there too, then. B3 threat level.
Correct. High risk in that ongoing covert conflict between Israel and Iran. Iranian social media accounts were hailing the IRGC action against supposed Mossad agents. It just adds another layer of volatility to an already tense region. And just a reminder as you listen, NextSight's capabilities go well beyond just reporting this news. Their OSINT specialists and investigative teams are experts at connecting these dots across borders, validating sources, mapping complex relationships, and really turning fragmented signals into actionable strategy for their clients.
Welcome back. We're continuing our deep dive into the August 24th intelligence brief. Let's turn now to Asia, where we see a mix of cooperation and rising tensions. First, some positive news between South Korea and Japan.
Yes, a significant diplomatic step. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung and Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba held their first formal bilateral summit in 17 years. They agreed to deepen security and economic ties.
The 17 years, wow. What specific commitments did they make?
They pledged increased security collaboration, sharing AI technology, coordinating more closely with the U.S. in that trilateral framework, and issued a joint statement emphasizing maritime security, supply chain resilience, and a unified approach towards North Korea.
Sounds like a major realignment, potentially. Threat level moderate, A2. Positive cooperation, but still shifts the geopolitical balance.
Exactly. And the public reaction seemed positive, too. Hashtag New Era of Cooperation was trending on social media in both countries.
Okay, good news there.
Yeah.
But not all smooth sailing in Asia.
Yep.
India and the U.S. hitting some snags in trade talks.
Yeah, India's foreign minister publicly stated some red lines. They're negotiating a free trade deal, but India insists on protecting its agricultural markets and, critically, wants to maintain its right to buy discounted Russian oil.
Oh, the Russian oil issue again, and the U.S. stance.
The U.S. seems intent on fully enforcing potential tariffs related to those oil purchases. Negotiations had stalled before, and this could derail them again. The financial risk is notable. Analysts suggest new tariffs could cut India's GDP growth by about 0.8 percentage points.
So a moderate B3 threat level. Potential trade friction disrupting supply chains. What's the feeling in India?
Skepticism online about the U.S. talks, lots of support for protecting farmers and national interests. It's clearly a sensitive domestic issue.
Understood. And more tension, this time between Taiwan and China.
Yes, a propaganda battle heating up ahead of separate World War II commemorations. Taipei is asserting its own narrative about the Republic of China's wartime role under Chiang Kai-shek, pushing back against Beijing's claims that the Communist Party led the resistance against Japan.
A battle over history, essentially.
Pretty much. Taiwanese veterans accused China of fabricating history. It increases cross-strait tensions, though not indicating immediate violence. So, moderate risk, B3. Taiwanese netizens were quite vocal online, criticizing what they called China's history theft.
Always a sensitive point.
Hey,
And North Korea. More missile tests.
Yep. Kim Jong-un supervised the test firing of new anti-aircraft missiles, reportedly designed to intercept drones and cruise missiles. This came just ahead of a planned U.S.-South Korea summit. Standard playbook, perhaps, but still raises tensions. B3, high risk of miscalculation.
And finally in Asia, a tragic accident in China.
Yes, unfortunately. A railway bridge under construction collapsed in Qinghai province. At least 12 workers were killed and 4 were missing after a steel cable reportedly snapped. A tragic industrial accident, low threat level A2 in geopolitical terms.
Awful news. Okay, let's shift focus to Africa now. A mix of items here, starting with some reparations.
Sort of. The UK government agreed to pay £2.9 million in compensation to over 7,000 Kenyan residents affected by a large wildfire back in 2021.
Caused by British military exercises, right? I remember that.
That's right. It took 4 years of negotiations and legal threats, but the settlement covers damage to grazing land and livelihoods in Laikipia. Low threat, A2. seen as a reconciliation process, though Kenyan villagers expressed relief mixed with frustration at the long delay.
Justice delayed, perhaps. Now, moving to political instability, which you mentioned earlier, connects to commodity markets. What's happening in Guinea?
Guinea's military junta suspended 3 major opposition parties for 3 months. They cited public disorder and threats to national security as reasons. Party leaders are banned from campaigning or holding meetings.
But critics see it differently.
Oh, definitely. Critics, along with ECOWAS and human rights groups, condemned it as suppressing dissent ahead of a planned referendum. This instability is a real concern for foreign investment, and mining Guinea is crucial for bauxite, the ore used for aluminum.
High risk, then. C3. Potential for protests, sanctions.
Yes, high risk. And it connects directly to commodity markets. This instability in Guinea, plus related political turmoil in the DRC, which we'll get to, can disrupt mining. We saw aluminum prices edge higher on this news. Guinean activists online vowed to continue protests despite the ban.
So what's happening in the DRC?
Congo's prosecutor is seeking the death penalty for former President Joseph Kabila. He's being tried in absentia on charges of treason, war crimes, and supporting the M23 rebels.
Wow, prosecuting a former president on such serious charges. That must be destabilizing.
Hugely. It has the potential to inflame regional insurgencies and definitely affects the mining sector. The DRC is critical for cobalt. Threat level high, B3. Congolese public opinion seems divided, some welcoming accountability, others fearing more violence.
So instability impacting key resources in both Guinea and DRC. But some positive development news from Africa, too. Japan's involvement.
Yes, at the Ticket 9 Summit, that's the Tokyo International Conference on African Development, Japan announced around 300 cooperation agreements with various African countries.
Across which sectors?
Infrastructure, healthcare, technology, agriculture. Things like digital health projects, feasibility studies for high-speed rail, joint farming ventures. Japan stated its aim is to align with African Union priorities.
Why the push from Japan? Countering China's influence.
That's certainly part of the strategic calculus, yes. Also, securing supply chain partnerships. Africa, of course, is seeking investment. These projects range from $50 million to $500 million each, potentially creating jobs and boosting infrastructure. Low-threat, A2, standard development cooperation.
Okay, a complex picture in Africa. Finally, let's head to Latin America. What are the key developments there?
Starting with a natural event, a magnitude 6.0 earthquake struck off the coast of El Salvador.
Any major damage?
Fortunately, no significant damage or casualties reported. It was shallow, about 81 kilometers southwest of Acayutla. Early warning systems worked, alerts were issued, and port operations were only briefly halted. So, low-threat A2, a natural disaster handled relatively well. People online in Central America shared videos and praised the warning systems.
Good to hear. But elsewhere, political tensions remain high, particularly in Colombia.
Yes. Former President Álvaro Uribe held a tribute for Miguel Uribe Turbay, a presidential hopeful assassinated back in June. Uribe demanded justice and criticized the current government's peace policies, calling for a tougher security crackdown.
And the event itself.
It highlighted the security concerns. The memorial in Bogotá had heavy security drones, armed police. It underscored the rising violence despite President Petro's total peace strategy. This political instability worries investors, flagged as high risk, B3.
How does that instability affect markets?
Well, connecting this to the broader picture, unrest in Colombia has definitely spooked bond investors. We saw Colombian bond yields jump by about 30 basis points following recent escalations. Colombians online expressed a mix of grief and demands for security reform.
A difficult situation. But like in Africa, some positive economic news too. H&M entering Brazil.
That's right. The Swedish fast fashion giant H&M opened its first physical store in Brazil, in São Paulo, and launched online sales at the same time. Crucially, they've also started producing some items, footwear, beachwear, jeans locally.
Local production, that's interesting. What's the strategy there?
They're aiming to tap into Brazil's large, growing middle class, obviously, but also reduce reliance on imports, avoid tariffs, and compete more effectively with local brands and Chinese online retailers like Shein. They're also expanding their distribution centers significantly.
It's like a major commitment.
It is. Low threat, A2, positive economic development. It's notable that this investment comes despite some of the political turmoil elsewhere in the region. The Brazilian real even appreciated slightly on expectations of this foreign direct investment.
Any local reaction?
Big queues for the store opening, lots of excitement among shoppers. But also, predictably, some activists raising concerns about fast fashion's labor and environmental practices. So a mix, but generally seen as a positive economic sign for Brazil.
Okay, quite a tour around the globe. So bringing it all together, what does this mean for you, our listeners, as you navigate the week ahead? What are the main takeaways?
I think the biggest takeaway is just how deeply interconnected everything is. It sounds like a cliche, but this brief really drives it home. Debates about migration policy in Europe aren't just abstract politics. They have tangible economic consequences that can ripple globally.
Right. And conflicts in the Middle East aren't isolated tragedies. They directly impact global energy prices that affect everyone.
Exactly. And even seemingly localized political instability, like we saw in Guinea or the DRC, can disrupt crucial commodity markets, bauxite for aluminum, cobalt for batteries, impacting industries far away. It's all linked.
So that interconnectedness is key. What about specific emerging risks we should really keep an eye on this week?
I'd highlight three main ones. First, that political backlash against immigration in Europe. Watch how that plays out, as it could genuinely hinder economic growth. Second, the deepening humanitarian crisis in Gaza remains incredibly volatile, with severe risk of broader conflict and continued market disruption, especially energy.
And the third?
Keep tracking that political instability in key African nations. As we saw, it has direct links to commodity supplies and prices, which can have widespread effects.
Okay, risks noted.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned opportunities and resilience. It wasn't all negative.
No, absolutely not. We saw significant diplomatic cooperation between South Korea and Japan, which is a positive shift. And corporate expansion, like H&M moving into Brazil despite regional challenges, shows underlying economic resilience and opportunity in emerging markets. Being aware of both the risks and these pockets of growth is crucial for smarter strategic thinking.
Definitely. It's about seeing the whole complex picture. So maybe a final thought to leave our listeners with, building on all this.
Yeah, here's something to ponder. Given this complex web we've just explored, the political maneuvering, the economic dependencies, the stark humanitarian crises, what's one assumption you currently hold about global stability or risk that maybe this deep dive challenges or perhaps reinforces for you this week?
That's a great question to mull over, food for thought as we start the week. And that concludes the Sunday, August 24th, 2025 Intelligence Brief, brought to you on this Monday, August 25th edition of the Deep Dive. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and Spotify. We appreciate it if you share your thoughts by liking, commenting, or just spreading the word. Stay informed, stay sharp, and may your Monday be more productive than your inbox.